In this video, I want to go over the basics of using text animators. And it may be a little bit intimidating at first, but I really want to encourage you to try out using them. And I think a good way to look at this is to twirl down this text menu here and then look at what's inside this area here. You'll see that we have path options, more options, and text, and we don't need to worry about those for this moment right now. What I want to do is apply an animate element. And when I do that, I can apply a whole bunch of different effects. And these can apply to either words or lines, or what's really exciting is the individual characters. So if I choose position, notice that it'll add in an animator here. And when I choose animator here, I'm going to rename this to position so I know exactly what I'm changing. And I'm going to just duplicate this layer so we see the original position. So I'm going to turn down the opacity on this one. Right now you can't see it underneath that area. I'm just going to lock this. So we have a invisible one underneath. When I have this position here and I adjust the Y position, notice that it's changing the overall area. And we're seeing our original shape or original text right here at the beginning. What this is doing is it's changing the overall position of our entire word or the text box. Now, you can animate that, right? Where I could come back to position here, jump forward and change this back to 0. But notice that's going to move the entire word, right? And that would be the same thing as animating the actual position using our transform tools. What I want to do is affect the actual characters. And in order to do that, I'm going to twirl down this range selector. And inside here, you'll see, and let's get rid of that keyframe. You'll see that we have a start and end position. And when I adjust this, such as the start position, it's going to change from where my changes actually start. So if I were to change this to 50, let's actually type in 50. Notice that we get the first half of the word at its original position, so it ignores that change that we made here, and the second half is applied here. If I wanted to do just this middle section, I could come back in and say, here's my middle area right inside there. And you can even grab these and notice it changes my end area down low. So if I wanted to just be this section, it will change these down here. Now what's cool is, say I want just, 25% of the word to like 50% of the word. So I just get a little bit. This offset allows me to cycle through the entire word. And notice it goes from -100, so it's going to start like all the way out here and move through. So if I were to keyframe this, let's have my offset position start at -100, go through to 1 second, and let's twirl this all the way up. It's a little fast. Let's slow that down. Now, if you only wanted a couple letters, you could also change this from 0 to, 10%. And notice it only does a couple words. So that's pretty playful and pretty fun. But one thing you'll notice is when it scrolls down, it keeps the area pretty straight. There's no like curve and there's no like overlap really between these letters. There's a tiny bit. So I'm going to reset this offset back down to 0. And we've got that 0 to 10. And maybe I'll increase this up just so we see a little bit more. I'm going to get rid of my offset keyframes. If I go down to advanced, you'll see that I have a couple options inside here. One, I can change based on characters. I could change it to words. So notice it affects the entire word right now. If I wanted things on different lines, this would work that way. And here, this is interesting, the shape. So that square is saying go from here and then immediately go up to the next area. So it's almost like an exact line. And that's a sort of shape of change. If I change this to ramp up, notice that it says start higher and then go back down, ramping up to this position. So start its original and ramp up to the position. If I change this to ramp down, it's going to say then start at, have our initial position here where it was. You can see our lower opacity here, and then ramp up to it. So if I was to cycle through, notice that it's going to start down low. So it's ramped down. So it's already at our change and then going back to our initial position. And so if you wanted to keep just that little bit of area going through, this is how that would work. So ramp down would do, or ramp up would do the opposite. So depending on how you're changing your shape or your word, you'd want to choose ramp up or ramp down. Or square, notice has that very clean sort of break. Triangle has that edge. And so again, if I was offsetting, you can have this come forward like that, where this is going to be our changed property, the 184 pixels down. And this is going to keep it at the original. So it's offset just a little bit. So if I wanted to just cycle through, that would be like this. So you can do a lot of cool stuff here, right? So one thing you can also do is add in a scale element as well. So you can add and combine animators onto themselves. So if I have this selected, I can change animate to scale, and it'll add in a scale position here. Now notice one thing. Inside here, there's an anchor point set to the bottom of each shape. If I want to move that up, because if I scale it, it's going to scale it up from the bottom. And let me just show that inside here. So as it moves through, notice that it's going to scale it up from the bottom of each shape rather than the center. So to change that, go to more options and grouping alignment. I'm going to adjust the Y position of that element inside there. And now if I change the scale, notice it's only affecting inside the area that I'd animated previously. So as this runs through, we get a cool combination of elements. So if you wanted to add on like something for rotation as well, I could then animate rotation and it adds it directly below it. And so when we look at that animation here, they get rotated to the side and then they'll come back to their original position. To add on another position, what I can do is go to animate and add on another position. And this is going to add another selector below it. And I want to rename this to position 2. And this one, because I added in scale and rotation, plus scale plus rotation. Here, what I can do is adjust my position. But what this does is it does it relative to what is already changed here. So if I go negative, notice that even though that one sends it down, right? Like technically this was our original position and this one went down. This adds that negative 183 back up to here. So if I want this to then be animated, what I can do is look at my range selector. I could adjust the first 30% of this, change my transform, change my advanced to, I want it to ramp down. All right, cool, ramping down. And I'm going to animate my offset. So same thing that I did before. Let's do negative 100 and zoom through here. And this will be up to positive 100. And so notice that if I offset them a tiny bit, then we get this really cool sort of double happening. And maybe I want this to start earlier and end a little bit earlier. So you can combine them together. I mean, like, you can play around as much as you want. But knowing that you can combine many different parts together, I think is really exciting. So for example, inside this one that's vote, I have 4 different positions and 3 different scales. There's actually, yeah, there's 4 different positions. And this one also comes in from the side of the screen, bounces a little bit, and exits. So just because I was playing with the Y position, you can also adjust the X position as well. And I'll include these project files as part of our examples.